everybody, and welcome back to the Drive Pink Dialogue. As always, I'm your host, Scotty. I'm here with my co-host, Saur. And before we get into Inter Miami, I want to start by asking you, how are you feeling, my man?
I'm feeling fantastic. It's finally time. Roster decisions have dropped. So we've been waiting for this conversation for the longest time ever. And it's here. And I can't wait to get into it.
It is here, and not only is the roster decisions in, but there's about 10 other things that happened in Inter Miami's world this weekend, and we're going to touch on a lot of them in this episode. Lionel Messi won the MVP. We'll talk about that. There's a preseason game that's being scheduled. We'll talk about that. More Club World Cup information. The CONCACAF Champions Cup draws tomorrow. New jerseys. I mean, there is a lot of things going on, player rumors, but let's start with what we know, and that is the key roster decisions that we've been waiting for since before Thanksgiving. Jordi Alba, contract extended. Are you shocked? Is this a player you were 100% guaranteed was going to leave, or is this exactly what you thought was going to happen?
I love the photo that you've put up. For those who are listening on audio, you're missing out on a really nice photo of Jordi Alba smiling with all his teeth intact. No surprises here, right? We expected this completely.
I think we should just do the quickest one first, and that's Jordi Alba. As long as this contract extension was not going to guarantee that he became a DP, this was a no-brainer. And clearly that's the case, because they wouldn't have done this so quickly if it was going to make him a DP. So Jordi Alba stays, best left back in MLS history. He's back, and there's no doubt about it. He makes this team a much better squad. Left back is solved. We knew he was going to be here. He's part of this core. He's part of this group, and we love him. Anything else we need to say about him, or can we get into some of the more interesting conversations?
The one thing I just want to say is he plays so much more than you give him credit for. And this is a player who just shows up every single time on the pitch and puts in an 8 out of 10 performance every single time. And his availability is his biggest asset. So glad he's back. Can't wait to see him play for Inter Miami for another season, and can't wait to see him do exactly what he does best. That's be the best left back in the history of the MLS.
Yeah, last season in the half season that we had him, I think he had a goal contribution every 3 games. And I was thinking to myself, if we get that from him this season from a left back, that's incredible. And all he did was be even better than that. So absolute stud. Let's get into some of the more interesting conversations. Let's start with Chelo Weigandt, who has had his loan extended. As far as I understand, he is on the same contract terms as last year. Inter Miami hasn't outright purchased him. They've just extended the loan. So he'll be on the same sort of salary charge that he was last year, which does make this a lot more palatable, but it also means they're committing to Chelo Weigandt for next season.
This was the most interesting decision that you and I were both looking out to. It was sort of a marker as to how Inter Miami is going to approach this offseason. And I feel like it's almost come down to a very well-made, rational decision that the Inter Miami administration has made with Chelo Weigandt. It could have been quite frustrating if we'd signed him on a new deal with a new package with a higher wage, because for all that he's worth in terms of what he brings to the locker room, how well he performs, consistently being good and average, that's an asset to have. But to give him higher wages than that, I do think there's a case to be made that you can get a better right back for more value of money. But I'm actually happy that we kept him on the same contract, just extended his loan. I'm sure there's going to be some perks attached to the loan extension, but I think keeping him on was a good decision in terms of how we structured the deal and not give him a whole new contract in itself. I'm happy with this. I think, as you mentioned very rightly, a lot more palatable if he's on the same contract. And I think he can do a job for Inter Miami that he did last season. I'm sure the players love him. He seems to be a popular figure in the locker room. And as long as he can continue to put in those good performances from time to time, I'm just expecting a little bit more from him next season, and I hope we get to see that.
I have a lot of thoughts about this that don't even really have to do with Chelo, who is fine. He's a solid, sturdy player, and I think anyone who disagrees with that is probably not paying close enough attention. Did he have a couple games where we were really critical of him because they all kind of came in a row? Yes. But over the course of the season, he was very solid, very sturdy. So I'm going to put that aside. Chelo coming back is fine. He's a starting caliber player in the MLS. That's all fine. My first thought is ambition. This has been my sort of keyword since we lost to Atlanta is Inter Miami going to go out and do everything they can to make this the best team possible? And I thought the first major decision was, what do you do with Tata Martino? We saw Tata moved on. Javier Mascherano came in. I thought the second big decision was this one about Chelo Weigandt. You said that you thought we can probably get a better player out there for the similar price. I agree with you, especially when we have the entire winter window to get this deal done. So for me, I'm a little disappointed they didn't show more ambition. They may love him more than we do. They see him every day. Okay, fine. I'll acknowledge that we don't have perfect information about what he's like behind the scenes or in practice or whatever. The second thing, and this is what I want to get your opinion on, that we haven't really talked about, is the confidence in this new structured Inter Miami to bring in those high-quality players. Tata Martino had a ton of confidence when it came to going out into the market and finding players that he could bring into his roster to make a positive impact. He trusted his scouts. He trusted his friends. He trusted his network. And he said, Chris Henderson, this is the guy, go get him. And I wonder, Raul Sanyehi, now a bigger part of this. Chris Henderson feels like he's falling down the list of importance. Javier Mascherano has never done this before. Tata Martino is obviously out. What is the confidence level of that backroom staff and the coaching staff that they can actually go out and get that better player? Because we talk about getting a better player as if we had confidence that they would, but the people that went out and got all of the players that built that confidence, Chris Henderson and Tata Martino, they're both gone now. And so I wonder if this is a decision made by new people saying, we have a solid player, let's stick with him, because if we go out and try and get another player, he might not be as good. And they're more concerned about that than we are, because we're sort of used to Henderson and Tata just bringing in good guys.
I have a counter hypothesis to this, so remind me to get to that, but I'll answer your question first. So, yes, I understand that Tata Martino leaving sort of nullifies the good scouting network that he had in South America, and maybe that's a consideration. But Inter Miami is a big club, and I would expect their scouting network, their data analysis team, to have that information about players around the world in terms of knowing what is available out there, what Inter Miami can do in the transfer market, and how far we can dip in terms of finding that player who not only fits this team, but is the right value for money. So I don't know if I completely agree with you whether this is a decision based on, oh, we're not going to be able to find a better player for the same worth, so let's just keep Chelo Weigandt. I think it has to do with more the fact that he's embedded himself into this team as an important player. Let's be honest. He's started majority of the games in that right back spot. He seems to be quite dependable, and that's what the decision seems to have been based on, that he's a dependable player who can do a job for Inter Miami. We can get him on the same money, same contract for next season as well. Why not extend his loan? I'm not sure if this is a consideration that they're keeping in mind, but maybe they plan to okay, well, he's on a loan, so they can't sell him, right? So that's not even a consideration. I apologize. But still, I do think there's a case to be made that this is more so them actually trusting Chelo Weigandt and liking him as a player than being like, oh, we might not have the same level of resources. Because I do think Inter Miami is a club big enough to have a deep team of scouts who are going to be doing all that networking and stuff. I hope I trust them more and they can live up to my trust. But it's definitely a good point that you bring up. So worth keeping in mind. But my counter hypothesis.
Hold on, before you get to that, I just want to say this is a new club. They don't have that sort of institutional infrastructure that you would expect from clubs that have been around for 20 years. So when you say they should have scouts behind the scenes, a lot of those are, I mean, I'm sure they employ scouts, but the trust, that reliability, the depth of experience and knowledge that comes through decades of work, I wouldn't be so confident that they have that. And that's why they rely on guys like Tata Martino. and we'll rely on Javier Mascherano for those types of suggestions and players. So I wouldn't have so much faith. But give me your counter hypothesis.
Yeah, but just to complete that argument again, I do think Raul Sanyehi and Javier Mascherano, they've been in the world of football for so long. So they probably do have players in mind. I think every new manager,
Yeah.
whenever he comes in, tends to have an idea of what kind of players he wants to recruit. And they always have that, especially with Javier Mascherano, who's been in the youth system for Argentina and has been around the international scene for so long. He has been exposed to a lot of players in and around. Now, they may not be experienced players, but
Well,
again, just
and I
putting
don't,
out a counter argument.
and I think also this is what I'm trying to say is not just can they find players that are good, but can they find players that they can also have navigate the MLS roster rules. So it's
Yeah.
not just
Yeah, I
going out
think
and
that's
finding a quality right back. It's having the experience and confidence to know, oh, we can go spend 550,000 on this player because we've built what the perfect roster looks like on paper. And so we know we have that amount of money to spend. Let's go see if we can get a player for that amount of money versus people that are new to this, which is what they are. So,
and your last point was exactly what my counter hypothesis was, that maybe they've seen the right back position and been like, you know what, this is not an urgent position that we need to upgrade to the most amazing level, right? Yeah, it would be really nice to have Jordi Alba caliber player on the right side of the pitch as well, but it's not the area of the pitch that we struggle the most. And if you want to invest more funds fixing this team and elevating some of the more urgent areas like defense, CDM, midfield, attacker, that's where you spend the bulk of your money on. So if you're able to get a player like Chelo Weigandt back on the same salary cap, on the same contract, that kind of does your job for the rest of the transfer season. And you can focus on finding those other areas that you're so concerned about. So that's potentially what these people are thinking behind the scenes, that we need to focus on other areas, let the right back situation be as it is for another season at least, and we can focus on it later. The second argument could be that they've seen Chelo Weigandt and been like, he's played 99% of the games last season. We need to bring him reinforcements. He may not be the starting right back. So you sign him on, keep him on the same contract, and then maybe go out and look for another right back who's maybe the better starting caliber, but they can compete with each other to, bolster that position. So that's something that comes to mind as well.
Yeah, this was going to be my next point is there any chance that this is one of two right backs they're bringing in?
I do
and
think
they
so.
felt we already have Chelo here. Let's just keep him because we need to anyways. And we'll still have an opportunity to go get another player that maybe is more offensively minded or whatever to compete with Chelo. Because, again, last season we saw when they traded DeAndre Yedlin and they hadn't signed Chelo yet, they didn't have anyone. And we know Ian Frey can play there. But, again, when he's healthy, sure. But I don't know if you can go into a season counting on Ian Frey to be the backup to Chelo Weigandt when even Chelo Weigandt did go through a couple injury spells. He wasn't always available. So I think maybe you do want to add another right back if it's not going to be.
How happy would you be going into the next season with just Chelo Weigandt as your right back? Would you be concerned?
Depends on what they do about everything else, right? Because I think right now Chelo Weigandt is the number 11 out of 11 in terms of talent in our starting 11. And so you'd want to upgrade that, but if they upgrade 4 other positions, then that's okay. He's fine,
Yeah, I'll be slightly concerned because I don't know if he can sustain the same level of availability for another season, because we played him a lot. And I feel like that period where we saw him struggle a little bit for form was largely due to how much we were overplaying him. So I'm hoping there's some sort of a plan to bring in somebody to back him up or compete with in that position, but we'll see. I think this is a decision that was up in the air. I'm not fully convinced with it, but I'm okay with it. I can understand it, especially with keeping him on the same contract.
Before I go to the next player and we can start talking about it, there's some breaking news. Are you okay if I just
yeah, of course,
break apart what we were doing and go to some breaking news? Because this, I think, is just a cool thing, and it'll just take us a minute or two. Diego Gomez bought his mom a house today in Paraguay, and there was a bunch of things on social media. And now he's he's at the airport flying to England, where he's going to officially join Brighton and Hove Albion. So congratulations to him. Incredible player. We knew that this was likely to happen. The paperwork had never really been signed and made official, but now it's happening. He's on his way there now. And so congratulations to him, and thank you for everything you did for us.
You can sign off another thing on our bingo card. Diego Gomez leaves. Yeah. Bittersweet moment for us Inter Miami fans, but we were more or less prepared for it. I'm glad that he got to see off the season. He got to see Inter Miami win that MLS Supporter Shield, and he was a big part of that. So thank you very much to him for his contributions this season. And as we've talked about so often on this podcast, he's going to be one of the players that we're going to watch with a lot of pride when we watch the English Premier League. And we both follow English football. Brighton's a really exciting team, and I think is the perfect team for someone like Diego Gomez to go and explore that side of the world and showcase his talent. So well done to him. I'm very, very happy that he's finally got this move. One of many, I hope.
Yeah, same. Okay, so Jordi Alba back, Chelo Weigandt back. So 2 fullbacks back in the fold. Noah Allen still on the roster. Ian Frey still on the roster. So you have 2 of each. In theory, you could be set if that's how Inter Miami wants to play it. Yannick Bright gets his contract extended. No doubt about that. Leo Alfonso, same thing. Ian Frey, same thing. City dos Santos, same thing. I don't know if we really need to talk about any of those guys. Ryan Sailor also gets his contract extended. Do you have any thoughts on him? I don't really have anything to say about Ryan Sailor.
No, it was just a little bit of a surprise. Yeah, it was a little bit of a surprise because I thought we would potentially go and upgrade our entire defense, but that was me being a little bit greedy. Well, I do think he does a fine job as a backup. So as a backup to the backup, he's good. And last season, every time he was asked to do a job, I thought he was completely fine, except that one time, I think, when he played right back and got absolutely rinsed by...
But that was Columbus, and he managed himself fine.
So he's done a good job. And if he does the same role next season as he did this season, I have absolutely no problem with him being on the roster.
Ryan Sailor, 320 minutes last season. If that's his role, I think you're happy to have him, right?
Yeah, completely.
Okay, that's it for the guys that had their contracts extended or their options agreed to. There were a couple surprises on the other end, and I think that we should definitely talk about, but some that I don't know if we have a ton to say. Cole Jensen gets his contract declined. He was a third-string goalkeeper. They drafted him in the first round in 2020, ahead of the 2023 season. 2 years with the club clearly didn't impress them enough to think long-term he was a solution. They have Dos Santos. They have a starter ahead of Dos Santos, whether it's going to be Drake Callender or someone else. I think maybe drafting a goalkeeper in the super draft becomes a high priority for them. They're going to have a late first-round pick, so you wouldn't expect them to get a high-quality player, field player, but you can probably get the second or third best goalkeeper there. So I think the only thing that matters is that it means they're probably going to draft a goalkeeper for the B team, but Cole Jensen clearly hadn't done what they wanted from him to this point.
Yeah, there's been rumors that Inter Miami has been looking for a goalkeeper. I don't know if that's a goalkeeper for the first team or if it's a goalkeeper.
Well, let's save that conversation for later.
Yeah, but I do expect
bring in a foreign goalkeeper for the B team.
I do think that his time at Inter Miami was coming to an end. Did not get too many minutes. I didn't see much of him this entire season.
He never played for the A team.
Yeah, there you go.
The other one, Felipe Valencia, long time member of the first team on the supplemental roster, was, I think, the youngest player to ever score in the USL champion or USL League One. Maybe they signed him when he was 15. He has not played a minute for either the A or B team in the last 2 seasons. I think injuries are part of that, but also, I mean, I think there's a big mystery around this kid. No one really knows what happened to him. But last year was kind of a surprise when they picked up his option. This year they don't. He's gone. I don't know if there's really much to say there. So let's get into the biggest one. And that is Matias Rojas. I was confident they were going to re-sign him or they were going to accept his option.
I almost saw him and Chelo felt like a parallel decision. It felt like if they keep Chelo, they're probably going to keep Rojas. If they keep Rojas, they're probably going to keep Chelo. And I think I was wrong on that for large measures because I was always associating Chelo and Rojas as a Tata Martino signing. So once Tata Martino left, I was like, I don't know if those two players are going to stay on. So in my mind, for some reason, I'd associated them as a package. Um, Cello being picked up and then Rojas not was interesting. And that was the first thing that stood out to me. But correct me if I'm wrong, they seem to be negotiating a new contract with him. So they don't want to keep him on the same contract, but they want to perhaps reduce his contract. And that's why they're discussing it in the background.
Uh, okay, so I'll explain that. Players that are in the MLS, but that haven't been in the MLS long enough to be true free agents, they go through the MLS re-entry system, and some of the players that we're about to talk about are going to go through that. So if you don't want your player to do that, you have to label them as someone that you're still negotiating with. That does not mean that Matias Rojas is coming back. Last year, we saw the same exact designation for Dixon Arroyo. He was not back. So anyone who saw that and thought, oh, they're just going to sign Matias Rojas next week, you should not be feeling that way. That is not how this works. Is it possible? Of course. But he wasn't making a ton of money this year. If there wasn't a huge increase in his salary for next year, they would much rather just sign him or just use the option, because I doubt they're going to sign him for any cheaper. I'm shocked by this because I thought even if you did want to move him on, you could like sign him and then trade him and get something of value for him. So this is shocking to me because he's a valuable player. We've heard announcers say he's a DP level player. I don't know if I would go there, but really, unless the contract had a huge escalator that would pay him double or something like that for what he was making this past year, this shocks me, honestly.
Yeah, so now that you've explained that, that also shocks me a little bit, because I was under the impression that they're probably negotiating a different sort of contract with him and potentially he's going to be brought on. Listen, that could happen. There might be something going on behind the scenes that we're obviously not aware of. But as you mentioned, this has happened before with Dixon Arroyo. He wasn't brought back in. And for all intents and purposes, at least for this conversation, we should assume that he's not being kept on and he hasn't been extended, right? Shocker, big shocker, because I genuinely thought that he'd be one of those players that they'd at least keep on until the January transfer window. And then maybe they move around a few pieces and use him as a leverage to bring in somebody else. And honestly, he's a decent roster player. Like, he's a good piece to have in your team. He had 9 goal contributions this season, which was potentially like 4th or 5th on the team combined with a few others. It felt like he didn't play that many games, but he had a lot of good contributions this entire season. And I'm sure when we look back on this season, we're going to have some really fun moments to think about when we think of Matias Rojas. I remember that insane free kick that he had. Again, my memory is like goldfish, so I don't even remember what team that was. I remember that New York Red Bulls game where he absolutely took the game by the scruff of its neck and was like, okay, listen, I'm going to bring you back from the brink of death. And it was great. He had some really awesome moments. So for me, he should have potentially been in contention to be brought back. And the fact that they brought back Chelo but didn't bring back Rojas, and not that those two are exclusive, it was a little bit confusing. And my only reasoning for this is that they're looking to massively upgrade their midfield. And as we discussed with Matias Rojas, they probably thought, okay, maybe we can't go out and get out a player who's better value for money. With Matias Rojas, they've thought we need to really elevate our midfield, upgrade our midfield, and it needs a complete revamp. So we need to let him go, and we need a clean slate.
Do you think this has anything to do with Julian Gressel?
Potentially, because I feel like I'll be even more shocked now if Julian Gressel is also let go before the trade, before the January transfer window opens. Because, okay, no, if Matias Rojas is not kept on and they let Julian Gressel go in January, that's going to be a little bit of a shocker, because it feels like both of them were often competing for a similar position and a same sort of a role in this team. And we talked about this, I think, a couple of podcasts ago, where we said that if we keep one and let the other go, it'll be understandable, because it often feels like there's too many players in a similar sort of a position. So maybe we let one go, keep one, and then get another player who's of a different dimension or a different role. So yeah, there's definitely a case to be made, and it'll be very interesting to see what they do with Julian Gressel in the January transfer window, because now that's a key piece. Because if you lose two of your very good caliber right wingers who could also play central midfielders, that means you're going to have to really upgrade that position and bring in more depth in the transfer window.
Yeah, I keep going back to this, but I wonder if this has to do with Sanyehi and Mascherano not understanding the MLS capacity, because this feels like a player you could 100% sell for value. Maybe they are deep in negotiations and they feel like that's right around the corner, and they just had to hit that deadline a couple weeks ago or about a week and a half ago in order to meet MLS roster expectations. But I mean, it's already been 10 days since that happened, right? And there's no contract. So I would be surprised if Matias Rojas is back at this point.
That's actually a really good point, because this has been in the making for the last 7 days. So it's really interesting.
Yeah. So Matias Rojas may be gone. I think that's the biggest shocker of the day. I really don't know what to say, because maybe they feel Julian Gressel, you mentioned it, they occupy similar roles. They feel like they're going to keep Julian Gressel. Maybe they feel like they can't move Julian Gressel and they don't want to be stuck with both of them. So they have the opt out for Rojas now, and they move him on. Shocking to me. And I'm curious to see what people in the chat think. I'm curious to see what people in the comments think, because it's a big surprise.
And also, I think we've grown fond of this player. I've grown fond of Matias Rojas. I really enjoyed him every time he was on the pitch. So it'll be sad not seeing him in the pink colors next year.
Didn't you have him like 18th in your draft list last week?
I did. But then, yeah, but this is not a relative conversation. I'm not comparing him to other players. I'm keeping him as an exclusive player who has some really good moments this entire season, didn't he? So I can say that I enjoyed a player.
Okay.
Just because we're comparing him and putting him in 18 doesn't mean he wasn't a good player for Inter Miami.
Okay, let's talk about Franco Negri, because I felt similar to how I felt about Matias Rojas. This is a player you could trade for value. Now, it's a little bit different because I think the league reputation of Rojas is higher than it is for Negri. I thought Negri was a great trade candidate all season, and they never moved him. So maybe they realized the market for him is not quite what they thought it would be, and ultimately they're deciding, well, if we couldn't trade him last year, we're not going to be able to trade him in the offseason. So they let him go. But again, this is a player I thought you could probably get some value for. And if we end up having to trade Robert Taylor and Julian Gressel, and the excuses we needed allocation money and international roster slots, just like the excuse was for Kamal Miller a year ago, it's going to be really disappointing, because Negri and Rojas were two guys that you probably could have gotten those things that you needed by trading those players. So Franco Negri, another player, backup left back, not on a huge wage, quality MLS type player, but the injury concern, I can understand why they let him go.
Yeah, and I was always under the impression that they will let him go. I had an inkling that he's not going to stick around in Miami longer, just because he didn't get that many minutes. And you make a really good point that potentially the reason for this is that there is no market for him. And even if they do manage to trade him or get him out, it won't be for enough. So they've probably thought that just to make sure we don't fall under the risk of keeping him on and we're unable to move him on in the January transfer window, is better to let him go now. So I am not super surprised by him, but you're absolutely right. There should have been some value for him, but we haven't seen him play that many games this season. So maybe that was another consideration that they had in mind. And with Noah Allen coming up, I do think we're going to see a lot more of him in that left back spot, deputizing for Jordi Alba. And then Jordi Alba tends to be playing basically 90% of the games anyways. So I thought he was, there wasn't enough room for him, and he was surplus to requirements.
Do you think there's any chance that they bring a new left back in?
I don't think so. I don't think that's a consideration. And Noah Allen can play in that position. Jordi Alba tends to do a really good tends to do a really good job there. Tends to do an amazing job there. I don't even think that's a consideration for them this offseason. They're probably looking at other positions. They've seen the roster. They're like, 2 left backs, we're good to go.
Yeah, I do wonder if Noah Allen's performances in the final weeks of the season gave the club the confidence that he can take over that 1,000 left back minutes that Jordi Alba is not going to play next season because of rest and rotation and all that stuff.
And
Um,
there's another case to be made that, yeah, we are looking at a center back, but maybe we're looking at more of a hybrid center back who can play that center back role, but can also play that left back role. I think another dimension to all of this, which maybe we're giving too much credit to Inter Miami and the backroom staff, is how Javier Mascherano actually wants to play. If he's playing three at the back and
good
you
point.
don't need that many left backs and you're looking more for left wing back sort of roles, then you don't need Franco Negri in there, right? You can do it Jordi Alba and you can do it Noah Allen. So a lot of interesting things happening. And I think one aspect of this conversation needs to be what Javier Mascherano wants to do. Now, we don't know that, so we can only speculate. But for all you know, they're looking at a center back who can potentially play in a left back role or left center back role as well. And they're like, maybe we can get 2 for 1 in one player. So
yeah, we'll see. I think you could see it either way. It scares me. You mentioned that maybe we're going to play a back three with wingbacks, and that scares me. And so I guess I don't really even want to think about that right now. Let's move on to Lawson Sunderland, because this is a young player on the supplemental roster. He's not that young. I think he's 23, so he's not 18. Didn't see a ton of minutes this year. It felt like this was a Tata Martino player from the get-go. He got his debut in Tata Martino's first game, and every single appearance he's made came under Tata. He did get a start in that Red Bulls game where we lost 4-0 on the road, and it felt like after that, we almost didn't see him for the rest of the season. And he finishes the year with 6 appearances, 3 starts, 3 off the bench, and he just didn't play much. And I have another point, but I'll let you talk about Sunderland before I get to it.
he started off much higher up on the list of backup midfielders. There was a lot of competition in there, a lot of up-and-coming players. Signing of Redondo probably pushed him further down. And then it just felt like he went off a cliff in terms of how the coaching staff viewed him and his position in the running to start in the midfield. David Ruiz was ahead of him. Benjamin Kramaski was ahead of him. Yannick Bright established himself as a player. And I don't think anyone expected that to happen. So Lawson Sunderland sort of lost his position over the course of the season. And this is an understandable decision. My question to you is, was there any value we could have got from him if we sold him in the January trade window?
Yeah, there was a player from LAFC today that got sold for like 100,000 GAM to San Diego FC. So maybe, as Sean is saying in the chat, Sunderland will land somewhere because he's a Bayern youth product.
Yeah, you could easily see him going.
Okay, so here's what I wanted to say about Sunderland and why I wanted to have a larger conversation about him. He was on the supplemental roster, so he didn't count against the salary charge. He didn't count against the salary cap. He came out of from this B team to the A team. It would be very easy to keep him, but you only get 10 supplemental roster slots. And I'm wondering if they're moving Sunderland on so that they can bring someone else through, whether that's Santi Morales, who's already on a first team contract, Tyler Hall, Israel Boatwright, some of the guys that we've speculated they might sign this year, like Brian Destin or Ryan Carmichael. That to me is what this feels like. It's a young player on the supplemental roster that they don't need, and they want to bring someone else through that's younger and has higher potential, higher ceiling. Maybe it's Santi Morales, who's now been signed for a year and a half and hasn't gotten his debut yet. That's what this feels like to me. Moving on a 23-year-old who is our 5th choice midfielder, 6th choice midfielder, or bringing in an 18-year-old that can do that job and we like long-term. So that's to me what this feels like.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. One question I had is, when you think about the expansion draft in San Diego, would he be eligible for us putting him up for that expansion draft?
I don't know. We're going to learn more about that over the next couple of days because that's happening.
So that's another consideration. Like, I would keep some of these players because he might need to move them on anyways if we're eligible for the expansion draft. So
yeah,
it's
but those
get really tense.
It's tough though, because once you have them on the team,
then you
it
got to,
might be hard to get rid of him. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
And not that you want to get rid of him, but just to move players on can be hard sometimes, especially for Inter Miami when it feels like other teams, at least last year, were trying to get the most they could out of Miami and really go hardball because of everything that Miami was doing with Messi and friends. Before we get to the final two, I want to mention Oscar Ustari, who was not under contract. He was also given that still negotiating designation. I have zero expectation he's going to be back. I would be floored if he's back. You're not going to make him the starting goalkeeper, and you're not going to use an international roster slot on a backup goalkeeper. So I will be shocked if he's back. But let's get to Nico Freire, because he was the first person we found out about. He mentioned it on his own Instagram. He announced it. And $1 million salary on loan from Pumas. He had some bright moments, had some not so bright moments. He was fine. And then he tore his ACL and we didn't see him much. So Nico Freire officially gone. It opens up a huge amount of salary space for Inter Miami to go out and bring in another defender.
100% expected this to happen after his ACL tear. His post that he put out almost seemed like this was the end of his Inter Miami career anyways. He was good, he was decent, but I don't think he was the level that we actually needed to shore up our defense. And ironically, we never got to that level. We never even got that with David Martinez. So we just fell a little bit short with Nico Freire. But I think when he was playing, it felt like there was more that he could have contributed to this squad the longer he stayed on. I talked about how well Toto Aviles complemented Nico Freire, and they seem to have been building a chemistry, and then the injury happened and it all went south from there. So completely understandable. This is another one of those conversations where whether he's worth the money, I don't think so. Not at all. And
yeah, he was building chemistry. There was a point in the season where you could see the defense improve, and he was a part of that at the very beginning before he tore his ACL. I was shocked when I found out we were paying him $1 million this year for the season. That's a huge amount of salary for this team. You're paying Jordi Alba 1.5. You're paying Suarez 1.5. You needed more from a guy that was only making $1 million. And even if he had played the whole season, I didn't think he was talented enough to demand that. So I thought he was going to be on 500,000. When you realize he's on $1 million, you feel you can absolutely go out and upgrade on him. So this was a no doubter for me. Before we continue, I just want to mention Sergei Kristoff, same thing, not back, very much expected. He's on a big salary. I think he was on 850,000 this year. There are reports that Kristoff's going to try and stay in the MLS. So you might see him on another team soon. But two players at Inter Miami had to get off the roster through just not accepting their further options. There was no value for them at their current contracts. So you move them on, and now you have two big salary spots for two dynamic center backs. If you can upgrade on them, all of a sudden you're looking at a center back core. And this is the best part of this. And this is why we wanted to dedicate almost a whole episode to this. Toto Aviles, David Martinez, and two high-level center backs on top of that. That is a roster construction that I can feel confident in. That's what I want to talk about.
First of all, I just want to say that I hate putting monetary value on players, but that's just the nature of the MLS and the roster construction. You have to do that, right? Nico Freire, Sergei Kristoff, both did their jobs. How much salary they were being paid, obviously, was the club's decision. You can't really blame that on them. But I do think there was better value for money out there. And at the end of the season, it was very, very clear. Despite the fact that we got in David Martinez, got in Nico Freire, we had Toto Aviles, this defense is abysmal on its best days and absolutely, absolutely dreadful on its worst days. And we need that upgrade. We definitely need that upgrade. I would say maybe even 3 defenders if we can get 3. I know that's a little bit too greedy from my end and maybe a little bit of a reach, but those 2 center backs who are coming in need to be starting quality center backs. They cannot be, this is a good center back, has an injury record. We're playing around with the monetary situation. We're going to have to make do with whoever we can get at that money value, right? No, that shouldn't be a consideration. For me, if you have good money to spend the season, a lot of that needs to go on the first center back. And then the second center back, you can maybe compromise on a little bit. But 2 center backs who are high quality, who are automatically going to improve this back line and are going to give you the best performance every time they're on the pitch, and maybe even be better than what we have right now, is what this team needs to challenge for that MLS Cup.
Yeah, and listen, center backs don't make as much money as goal scorers. That's just the nature of soccer. B, these two players were both on international roster slots, and they both took up a lot of allocation money. So you are, by removing them from the roster, creating the space to go out and get two new center backs. And it can just be like a like-for-like switch with just a talent upgrade, because now you can use Lionel Messi and everyone to recruit. This is where I think Raul Sanyehi's connections in Europe are going to be important. This is where I think Javier Mascherano's connections with the youth pool in South America are going to be important. Go out and get me one more Toto Aviles, who's a young and exciting player.
I was going to say the exact same thing.
Who you feel really good about. Then I think people will stop complaining about the center backs until we get into next season, because that would make me feel really good. And again, Christoph and Frede, they're solid, fine level players, but they shouldn't have been making more than Matias Rojas and, Robert Taylor and Drake Callender and guys like that. Okay, so I think that's everyone. And I think the overall picture is we get rid of a midfielder / attacker and open up room to sign another midfielder / attacker that isn't a DP level player, because we move on Matias Rojas. We move on 2 center backs. So now we have room for 2 new center backs, and Diego Gomez leaves, which means we have room for a left winger. That's what you want, right? That's what the roster makeup is. Maybe you want another right back. I don't know. You're going to want a defensive midfielder, but that doesn't have to be a big money sign. The room to do everything you want to do has been created now. And I think that is a really good feeling compared to this time last year when they had to move 6, 7, 8 guys off the roster, and they were really struggling to do it because teams wanted to extort them for the best value.
The biggest takeaway from these decisions, and this is what I was looking out for, is to understand what positions they're prioritizing, and it's fairly clear. It's very, very clear. If they kept on Sergei Christoph, or maybe even Nico Ferre, that would have told me, maybe they're reconsidering signing a few players or positions, because they may want to pump in money in bringing in a really marquee signing as a forward. And that for me is a little bit of a concern. But them letting go of Nico Freire, letting go of Christoph, Sunderland gone, Gomez gone, Matias Rojas potentially leaving as well, that they're looking to revamp that spine of this team. And the midfield is going to get another couple of new faces. The centre-backs are going to get replaced. And that for me is super exciting, because it goes to show that at least they've recognized that there's a problem. There was a problem last season.
Yeah.
These were the problem areas, and this is what we need to address. Now, do they address it properly? Do they bring in the right profiles? That's a question that we're going to get at the end of the transfer window. But at this point in time, it's quite pleasing to see they're on the right track.
The last thing I wanted to say is, would you put Matias Rojas in your best starting 11? Would you have put him in? Would you have put Sergei Christoph in your best starting 11?
No.
Would you have put Nico Freire in? So all of a sudden, 3 big contracts come off the books, and you don't lose a single starter from your roster. That is a great place to be from a roster building perspective. And I just want to give kudos to Chris Henderson for making that possible, because even if he's not making these decisions, even if he does move on, he's still going to have such a hand on the DNA of how this roster was constructed and the flexibility that we had to move forward. Anything else on the roster decisions? Because we still have like 10 things to talk about.
No, I think we can move on to the other 10 things that we need to talk about, because those are just as exciting as this.
Okay, let's talk about Lionel Messi, because he won the MVP. And before we do, I just want to play this for you. Can I tell you a stat that I think might change the nature of this conversation?
Yep.
Luis Suarez in the MLS this year, 16 goals, 5 assists, 21 goal contributions. How many goal contributions do you think Messi has right now?
I know he has about 13 assists.
He's got 9 assists and 12 goals. He's got the same number. He has the same number of goal contributions as Luis Suarez. And so forgive me for thinking that the minute Messi steps back onto the field, he's going to win the Golden Boot, which he's still in it, by the way. He's got 12 goals. The current is 17 is the number. And he now only has to beat the rest of the competition by 5 goals. He's going to get assists. Almost every Luis Suarez goal is probably going to have at least half an assist for Lionel Messi. I actually think at this point, Lionel Messi might be the more likely to win the MLS MVP. Luis Suarez has only played 20 games this year. I'm sorry, he's played 20. Lionel Messi's only played 12. And yet, if Messi does what he did for the first 12 in the next 7, he's going to finish with another 2 goal contributions per game. He's going to finish with 35 goal contributions, and that's going to blow out everyone else in the league. I actually think Messi is still the more likely to win the MLS MVP. That video was filmed on September 1st, right after back-to-back braces for Luis Suarez, and everyone was saying Luis Suarez was going to win the MVP. Messi was injured after Copa America. I just got to say, I went all the way back to find that video just so I can say, I told you so. Lionel Messi wins the MVP. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, you deserve to boast that one. I will say it was slightly overstated because I do think Messi had a little bit of a dip on certain games, but just the fact that he was able to still win the MVP. Are we even surprised by this?
No, and it was the right choice. He
I
led the
feel
league
like
in goal contributions.
He could have done much better and completely destroyed all records if he played all games. So this was insane.
He had 36 goal contributions, which led the league. He was second, I think, in goals and second in assists, and he only played like 20 out of 34 games. I think 19 out of 34 games. He's incredible, and if he plays next year 30 games, 31 games, like he'll still miss a game or two because they want to rest him or whatever, but if he plays 30 plus games in the MLS, he's coming for that 49 goal contribution record that Carlos, the LAFC player from 2019 had. Carlos Vela. Thank you. He's coming for that if he stays healthy and he plays a lot because he's a phenom. He's going to win back-to-back MLS MVPs next year if he stays healthy. And he deserves it, man. He really does.
Yeah, and he's not going to have the Copa America next year. So he's potentially not going to get that injured on international duty, and that's always a positive for Inter Miami fans. It's insane. His numbers are absolutely mind-blowing, and sometimes you wish him to do more. Like last season, we did want him to do a little bit more, but it's just inhumane to even think that you would want more out of what he's already doing. If you just take a step back and think about how much he's contributed to this team, it's inhuman, it's alien, and it shouldn't be allowed. You're absolutely right. Next season, if he stays fit, he will break every single record there is to break. Talk about adjusting to the MLS. The greatest player in the world does not need to adjust to anything. And he's just that good, man. Not just the goals, also the assists, and he leads the team from the front. Every time he's on the pitch, it's a different feeling for Inter Miami fans. And it's a shame that we weren't able to complete the story this time around, but we continue to read the book and the chapters just get more interesting and more interesting as we go around. I do think before he retires, we are going to win the MLS Cup, if not two. So I'm excited for that journey as well.
Yeah, we have so many things to talk about, so we're not going to talk about the Galaxy winning the cup. But I saw someone on Twitter post a couple graphics of what their crest could look like with 6 stars now. And I was just thinking, man, I'm so jealous that we didn't get that
just
star.
that one. We just need that one.
Well, we'll take 5 actually. But okay, let's keep it moving because, Messi, we've vouched for him many times to win the MVP, and I don't think it's a surprise to anyone. I will say he won both the players and the coaches vote. The club vote, he did the worst, and I don't even think he won. I think Cucho Hernandez won that. And so, again, there feels like there's a little bit of jealousy, a little bit of passive aggressiveness from other clubs towards what Messi and Inter Miami are, in spite of the fact of all the great things that Messi's done. I thought Inter Miami losing in the playoffs might alleviate some of that, as in Messi's not so good that they just crush everybody and dominate everything. But you could see that a little bit in this vote, I think. Yeah. Okay, moving forward, there was a report that Inter Miami has a preseason friendly scheduled in Honduras against Olimpia, which is one of the best clubs in Honduras. They did something similar last year. They played the El Salvadorian national team. So in January, they're going to go play Olimpia in Honduras. It's going to be getting that exposure, CONCACAF away. Part of this preseason tour, we already know about the Orlando City game on February 14th. Now we've got one in January against Olimpia. We think they're going to have something scheduled for a game in Brazil over the next, we'll hear about over the next couple week or two. But Olympia officially on the schedule for early January. And again, this is exactly the type of preseason game I want to see them play. Get exposure in a way that's going to help you for the season. And I think it looks good.
It's going to be a South America tour for our preseason, and I actually really like that.
This is in Honduras, just to be clear.
Yeah, I mean, Central America, South America, that region of the world. I think that's exactly how you want to go. Give yourself exposure to some of these teams who play really aggressive, good football, and challenge yourself in these situations. Traveling is always going to be difficult, but that's what you're going to have to do in CONCACAF as well. And I'm excited that we're keeping in mind not just the CONCACAF, but I also think it helps us in the Club World Cup preparations, because these teams are no joke, and it's going to be really interesting to play against them. So excited to see what happens, and the club is on the right track in terms of planning that preseason.
Yeah, and the environment, that's what you want to emulate.
Yeah.
You know, Olympia is not going to be a team that's, you know, like Monterrey or Pachuca or something that you're going to see in the late rounds of the CONCACAF Champions Cup. But that experience away could be similar. Being in a hotel where they're banging the drums outside to prevent you from sleeping, that's going to be similar. Having to drink water bottles because you don't trust the water there because the hotel staff is trying to root their team on. Those types of things that you see in Mexico late in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, that's what you want to prepare for. So that's why I love having a game like this. Again, they did it last year. They're doing it again this year, and I really enjoy it. I will say, last year, both Benjamin Kramaski and Facundo Farias got hurt in that El Salvador game. So hopefully everyone stays healthy, but I don't blame El Salvador for either of those. Okay, moving forward along a similar theme, the CONCACAF Champions Cup draw is tomorrow. I have the pots on screen right now, but basically Inter Miami is in pot 1. There are 2 pots, and you will be matched up with a team in pot 2. There are 2 MLS teams in pot 2, Sporting Kansas City and the Colorado Rapids. Those are the 2 teams you want to avoid in the first round of the CONCACAF Champions Cup. Inter Miami will be on the road to open up between either February 4th, 5th, or 6th, and then they'll play the return leg 2 weeks later. But you obviously have to get out of the first round. If you're playing any of the teams from Canada or the Dominican Republic or Haiti or, you know, the Caribbean or Central America, you should feel very good about advancing. But if you have to play the Colorado Rapids, they're going to try and improve off what they did last season. That is not what you want to see in the first round. I believe last year, St. Louis City and Houston got matched up in the first round, and St. Louis City went home right away. So the draw is tomorrow, and this is important for the early part of Inter Miami season.
Yeah, there's some interesting teams in that second pot. It'll be really interesting to see. So you mean to say that we'll only be matched up with teams in that second pot, right? Nobody from the first pot.
In the first round, yes. So
yeah,
each pot 1 team will be with a pot 2 team.
I think that's positive because I don't recognize too many big teams in that second pot. But again, you can't underestimate any of these teams in the CONCACAF Champions Cup.
Yeah, so just for anyone listening on the podcast, the Colorado Rapids and Sporting Kansas City are both in pot 2. Cavalry FC and Forge are both Canadian Premier League teams. That's a potential matchup. Herediano and Deportiva Saprissa, 2 big Costa Rican teams. They are in that pot. They were in the CONCACAF Champions Cup this year. Real Esteli also in the CONCACAF Champions Cup this year. Motagua, Antigua, Cibao, and Real Hope, a Haitian team, also in there. But Real Hope is from Haiti. There was a Haitian team 2 years ago that had a really nice run. They beat Austin FC. So you got to be careful, but especially on the road. But as long as you don't get the Colorado Rapids and maybe Sporting Kansas City too, Inter Miami should feel good about advancing. And there are some fun, interesting teams that are local powerhouses in the region that we could be matched up with.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this tournament. I think last time we were slightly robbed with Inter Miami's deep run because we were mentally prepared for Inter Miami to actually challenge for the cup, if not win it. And it just felt so flat when we lost to Monterrey in that game. And I hope this time around we rectify that. And I'm not saying we have to win this trophy. We have to win this trophy. But I would really enjoy as a fan to go deep into this tournament because there are some really good teams in there and you want to beat the best to be the best. And I almost feel like this is our Champions League. And if you can get far or even win this, exactly. If you win this, this is a massive achievement for Inter Miami as much as the MLS Cup.
No, if I could only win one, I think I would choose this one because it's
Yeah,
so
I know.
hard,
There's
so
just
rare.
something so exciting about this.
Yeah, the Continental Cup. I will say, last year we started in the second round because we had won the Leagues Cup, and the Leagues Cup winner gets a bye into the second round. And so we
Yeah.
just played Nashville, and then we went up against Monterrey. This year we start in the first round. I think if we get into the third or the quarterfinals, semifinals, it's going to be 4 or 5 rounds, and we're going to feel like we went really deep, as opposed to last year because we only really won one round last year. So
Yeah.
I kind of like starting in the first round, getting an easy opponent, building momentum into the tournament, and feeling good about where you're at, as opposed to the first game is sort of a do or die at Nashville. Tough
And
environment.
might I remind you, the problem with the last Champions Cup was we didn't have the team chemistry because
Yeah.
it was really early in the season. And I feel like if you play those early games against lesser opposition, you can at least build that chemistry and get into a good mindset when you go into the knockout round. So you're absolutely right. It felt like we started off from basically zero in the knockouts round, which wasn't ideal. But hopefully this time around is going to be a natural progression upwards rather than a flat fall down.
Yeah. And so we talked about Olympia, which is a Honduran club that has been in this tournament many times. They're not in it this year, but that's the type of competition you're going to be potentially facing in the first round. So getting that experience on the road, I think, is really nice to prepare you for this first round game, because it could be in Honduras, Haiti, Dominican Republic, Canada, Costa Rica, and hopefully not in Colorado or Kansas City, because not only would that be boring, it would also be the most challenging. Okay, let's move forward because there's more scheduling information. This one's quick. Last episode, we talked about the Club World Cup. We knew what our group was, but the schedule hadn't been released yet. We knew Inter Miami was going to open the tournament against Al Ahly on Saturday, June 14th at Hard Rock Stadium in Miami. But now we know their next 2 games. They're going to play Porto's second on Thursday, June 19th. That's going to be at Atlanta. I believe that Atlanta is going to import natural grass for that tournament because they're going to do it for the World Cup the next year. And so this is sort of a trial run for them. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I would hate to play Porto on the turf in Atlanta. That would suck. And then the Palmeiras game is going to be June 23rd on Monday. That's back at Hard Rock Stadium. So 2 games in Miami, 1 in Atlanta. And it's just really exciting. I'm very excited for these games, honestly.
Yeah, it's a good matchup, especially having 2 games at home is comfortable. Starting off at home is really comfortable. I don't know whether this is progressively more difficult or just a sustained level of difficulty. So it'd be really interesting to see how we perform against Al Ahly, and then our expectations will, I think, be set from there. If we put up a good performance against Al Ahly, that actually puts us in a really good position to then maybe go on and progress to the next round. So I'm excited. The closer we get to the tournament, my excitement levels are actually going to increase because it just feels like right now there's too many other variables, especially in terms of the roster construction that I'm thinking about. But again, more games for Inter Miami, more reasons for me to watch Inter Miami play and dig into new teams and do more research, which is exactly what I love the most. So very excited as well as we go into the season.
Yeah, and again, we're getting up close to an hour, so we're just going to keep it moving. There's a new kit. This is on screen right now. If you're watching this on YouTube, it is a picture of what it's supposed to look like. Now, I'm assuming this picture is the replica version, and the authentic jersey will be a little bit more detailed, which is what we've seen with every kit over the last couple of years. It's black and dark gray, and there's sort of a split down the middle. They're supposed to officially unveil it on Thursday, December 12th, and so it should go on sale that night. As always, I'll get one. I have to figure out who I'm gonna get on the back. But yeah, how do you feel about it? You like it? You hate it?
I kind of like it. It's nice. It's a nice little
I will say
gradient between gray and black, and it's not bad. I always like the black on pink, man. It always is my favorite.
I will say as far as I can tell so far, and again, I do believe this is a replica and not the authentic version, the detailing and the overall look does not have the same sort of professionalism as the La Noche or the La Palma that Inter Miami's had in the past. So we'll see. I'm excited to see what it looks like over the next couple of days. Whenever it comes to kits, I want to see them mix and match the shortened shirts because I think that's what
I
makes it really
know.
cool. If you
Well,
put pink shorts on this one,
pink shorts, I don't know how it plays out,
I
but
think it'll look good. I
um,
think it'll look good.
yeah, I hope so. We are still getting a home kit, right?
Yeah. So also news, Footy Headlines is reporting that Inter Miami is going to also get a new home kit and a new third kit for next season. So we talked about that a little bit over the last couple of weeks, but 3 new kits this winter, which is awesome. I mean, I'm a big kits guy, so I enjoy that a lot. I will say, if the pink home kit looks exactly like this, it's just 2 different shades of pink, I will be upset because this is not super unique or exciting. So those are my feelings on it. Is that all you got on kits?
Yeah, I think that's about it. It'll be exciting during our Thursday episode to see what the actual render looks like. So we'll see if it's close enough.
Okay, guys. Last thing I wanted to do, because we are keeping track over the course of this offseason. If you watched our episode about offseason bingo, we created bingo cards in order to talk about the offseason, but also make some predictions. And we created our own bingo cards. And now that we have a lot of updates today and over the last couple of days, it is time to check progress. So first, we got Saur's list here. And I think it may even be upgraded since I made this, but he's looking sharper than I thought he was going to coming in. Obviously, Ryan Saylor getting released, that was wrong. Inter Miami re-signing Matias Rojas, that was wrong. Inter Miami keeping Tata Martino, that was wrong. But Inter Miami buys Chelo. Inter Miami doesn't buy Nico Frede. Inter Miami re-signs Luis Suarez, letting Christoph go, letting Negri go, letting Sunderland go. 6 in the correct column, 3 in the wrong column. How you feeling about it?
This is looking juicy. It's looking very, very good. I think that 4th row across is my golden goose. The problem is we're probably not going to sign anybody before like mid-January, and I'm just afraid you might get there before me. But I do think, and we're going to get to your card, I think I have more paths to victory than you do. It might just be that you get there quicker. I'm not sure. We'll see. I'm very happy with the way this is shaping out. I've got some really good rows, and I feel like the 4th row across center back, we're definitely signing, has to happen. I'm almost going to claim any midfielder that we sign as a DM, honestly. I'm just going to do it. And I think I can win this. Guys,
Yes.
Please comment who you think has a better bingo card, because I genuinely think I'm doing better than Scotty here.
I'm much more optimistic for you than I was right after we started this. I will also say,
Diego Gomez departing gives me another one of those where I'm going to have only 2 more away.
So also Diego Gomez departing the club. We said that in the beginning of the episode. That just happened today. So you're getting close, man. You're much closer than I am. And I will congratulate you, because when we finished that, I thought there was no way I was going to lose. And certainly you're looking better than me. We'll go to mine. I'm only 2 away from a bingo in multiple different rows, columns, but one of them requires Drake Callender getting traded. I don't know if that's happening anytime soon. And then getting the center back and the left winger, I don't know if that's happening anytime soon. So
you're only 2 away in 1 row.
No, across the middle row too. The 3rd row.
No, but you've got Tata Martino up top.
The middle row.
That's not 3. That's 2. Oh, wait, Diego Gomez coming in.
Gomez.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay, so anyways,
my math has never been my strongest suit.
For anyone that's listening on podcast, some of the other ones that we have: Inter Miami signs a center back, Inter Miami signs a second center back, trading Julian Gressel, signing Neymar, signing Pogba, signing Gio Farena, Robert Taylor getting traded, Callender getting traded, Chris Henderson leaving the club, Brian Destin and Ryan Carmichael getting a first-team contract. Breaking the transfer record is also on there somewhere. So I agree with you, actually. I did the math today. I updated it, and you definitely are looking in a better spot than I am right now. But for me, it's that middle row across, that 3rd row. I am very confident that's going to hit. It's just a matter of
when it hits.
Does it hit first? There's a chance that center back hits us for both, gets us bingo at the same time.
Yeah.
So there's a chance that we hit bingo on the
very
same
much possible.
Okay. I will just mention this quickly. We were going to talk about if we had time. Real Betis defender Marc Bartra was connected to Inter Miami. He's a defender, 33-year-old, obviously it played in Europe. Lanús goalkeeper Nanuel Losada, Uriel Ayuk reported that Inter Miami is looking at bringing him in. So maybe there's some goalkeeper movement going forward. Then also there's seemingly a couple reports coming out of England that Kevin De Bruyne is the guy that Inter Miami is going to target next summer. We could have speculated and had fun with that conversation for 20 minutes if there wasn't much to talk about, but there was a ton to talk about today. So we'll just leave it at that. We might come back to it.
Great defensive midfield option for Inter Miami for sure.
Yeah, well, listen, I think if you put Kevin De Bruyne on this midfield, we'll be pretty good. But who knows if that's real or just paper talk. But anyways, guys, that's it for us. Anything else you want to say, Saur, before we head out?
No, I'm looking forward to the day that I can boast winning this bingo card, because I feel like you really put me down when we were making this out, and it's going to be vindication when I do win. Other than that, it's been a fun episode. Lots to talk about, and it's classic Inter Miami. For days, there's nothing, and then one day they just throw everything at us. So apologies if this felt rushed, and I'm sure we're going to get into some of these topics more so as the season comes to a much closer in its start. But other than that, it's been a fun conversation. And over to you to take us out.
Well, before I just see a chat in the comment section. Cringe says we should recruit players directly from La Masia. This is something this is something I have a thought that maybe we could do a topic on one day, if it's slow or whatever. But Ricky Puig, huge player, unfortunate injury, but huge contributor, the best player on a team that just won the MLS Cup. He came out of La Masia, obviously, had a little bit of a run with Barcelona, but didn't quite make it. I would love to see the MLS go out and recruit the guys that just aren't quite good enough for Barcelona or Real Madrid or Manchester United or Bayern Munich or Manchester City. If they can get those guys that are high-quality players, 22 years old, 21 years old, not quite good enough to make that world-class jump to being a real contributor at those clubs, I would love to see the MLS go out and get more of those guys, because that's a real key piece of growth for me. And is it hard to attract them? Yes, but obviously it worked with some. And every time you get a Ricky Puig, it becomes easier to recruit those guys.
And it can be a feeder system as well, right? Give them a couple of years to grow in this league and then send them back out.
Okay, guys, that's it for us. We'll be back later this week. We have a fun episode that's less newsy and more just talking about the season, talking about Inter Miami. So we're excited for that. And until then, thank you, Inter Miami, for finally releasing your roster decisions. Saur, thank you for being here as always. And to the chat, as always, I hope you guys have a wonderful night. And thank you for being here. We'll see you guys next time. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. Do us a favor and hit that like and subscribe button. Since our first viewer, sharing this with you all has been the very best part. So from the beginning until the end, thank you for being a part of this, and have a wonderful day.